Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And welcome, welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And it brings me great pleasure to have Dan Willis back with us. And Dan, I don't even want to waste time going through like the plethora of the wonderful things that you did. They can read that in the bio section of the YouTube. Thank you for coming back and joining us.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, Anelia. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting dive into the, I guess you'd call it the matrix of perception.
Yes, very much so. And I just want to say that there's so much depth here, and there's so much that I want to ask questions and explore. So I'm just going to ask you, let's just get started right away. We are going to be talking about history disclosure. And will you introduce the topic just a little bit more for our audience?
Yes, disclosure happens to deal with the aspect of disclosing things that have been hidden with secrecy and how our perceptions of the world, since our birth, from what we're taught in school, what we see on television, what our parents shared with us, um, forms uh, our perception of the world. And
Mhm.
if these information systems have been infiltrated in order to keep us believing there's one reality, while another reality exists, this is something that is important to disclose because an incredible world awaits for us that's been withheld because our essentially our planet's been hijacked by elements
Mhm.
that and this is coming to a close as more people are becoming awake. I'm just one small voice of many voices on this planet on alternative media channels like you have, and we as I say, facts and evidence destroys propaganda. So that's what we're going to bring forth. I'm going to bring forth some elements that can be substantiated and will help help tell the story that we're going to tell.
Well, I'm excited to tell this story because the fundamental question that would be on anyone's mind is how does a planet get hijacked by its technology? And I want to I want to say a little bit of the groundwork in terms of technology because I'm a technologist. I mean, I spent my career in technology. I design computer networks for a living, and people will go, "Oh, okay. Well, the technology is so sophisticated now. You can't break anything. You can't, you have encryption. You have this, that, and the other." But really, having worked in the IT industry for many years, one of the things that you know as a technologist is that anything that has been designed to be a closed system can always be hacked into. It's not a matter of how or if, it's just a matter of who's ahead in the technology.
Mm.
Okay. And the person that has access to it or wants to break into it, are they ahead? Or is the person who is designing the technology so that it's a closed system ahead and they leapfrog ahead back and forth all the time? So it's just who's ahead in the game. Technology can or what I want to say is there's no such thing as completely secure. There's just no such thing, at least in our level of technology, in my mind. So you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, as knowing that you have been privy to sophisticated technology that doesn't even that we haven't had access to yet. But what are your thoughts?
Oh, I 100% agree with you. My thoughts are that, there's different classifications of civilization development.
Mm,
We are thought
very.
of as a class two civilization, which is a primary, which is using nuclear, oil, and coal, primitive, obsolete technologies for power generation, that we need rockets in order to overcome gravity, whereas, anti-gravity systems have been developed many decades ago. Um, and medical systems, where the understanding of what reality actually is, that we are energy, we are a holographic we're in a holographic matrix, you could say, in which consciousness interacts with, and that technologies that can tune through the vector of time and cure any disease using holographic technologies all exist behind this curtain, which is a stage 3 civilization, which is basically labeled as a interstellar that has made contact with, on its own, advanced civilizations out where in the galaxy.
Right.
This is the fact, but it's been kept and hidden through many different means and sources, of which I've had a lot of personal firsthand experience with, and I'm going to share in a little story today with our viewers.
Well, then let's do that. Let's leap right forward into the story. Please, please
Let's
do.
jump right in.
Jump right in.
Okay, here we go. It's a long, complicated story, and to some it sounds like a science fiction movie, but don't trust anybody. We're in a state of psychological warfare right now, and so
Mhm.
you have disinformation agents working with the people that are telling the truth. So it's trying to muddy the waters, and so do your own research and verify. Look for corroborating evidence that supports what the truth is. And that's what I've been doing for several decades. And so here we go. Okay, yeah, how I got involved with this subject matter. Um, I had a high-level top secret security clearance in naval communications. In 1969, I received a report from a ship off the coast of Alaska that reported a 70-foot diameter disk that emerged out of the ocean. This was um, classified priority going to Chief of Naval Operations. It was an authenticated message, so I knew it was real. So there's no faking this. It was going over 7,000 miles per hour according to the ship's radar. This all was stuck in my mind. Like when I was a kid in the 50s, I used to love science fiction movies, and I thought it was just imagination, right, from science fiction writers. So it made me wonder why we haven't had disclosure. So two main questions came to mind, and why hasn't the government disclosed this to the public, and why, uh, if if that craft was obviously 1969, I mean, I couldn't imagine anybody on Earth having that technology. So
Right.
I would assume it's extraterrestrial. Why don't they make themselves known and say, "Greetings, people of Earth"? Um, what I've learned over the decades and much research over many authenticated classified documents, hundreds of witness testimonies, is that ever since 1955, there's been a system set up of secrecy that has denied presidents, CIA directors, heads of intelligence. Doesn't matter what level you're at, you're being going to be denied access. And so this all started back in 1955 when President Eisenhower lost control to a Nazi extraterrestrial alliance. Um, he had to essentially negotiate an agreement surrender at Holloman Air Force Base. And we're going to get in why all that happened. But we're going to go
Sure.
chronologically here on the dates. In
Mhm.
1958, a CIA operative explained that the MJ12 group who was controlling this, they denied him access. And he said to them that he's going to go in with the First Army. They're going to rip this thing apart. I don't care what kind of program you have down there. Um, and they were allowed two agents, CIA agents, of which this one agent on his deathbed testimony testified that Eisenhower was being denied access. And he attempted, to warn the public in his television address in '61, beware of the misplaced powers and unwarranted influence of the industrial military complex, which had actually been infiltrated by the Fourth Reich at that time, and that only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can protect our future liberties and freedoms. Um, Now, Kennedy, he attempted to release the files. He sends a top secret memo to the CIA director. Unfortunately, MJ-12 uh, member, who is MJ-1, Alan Dulles, set up an assassination directive. So 10
Hmm.
days after this memo went out, President Kennedy was assassinated. So he was denied by extreme prejudice, as they call it. Here you can see in the worst handwriting possible, it says, Angleton has the MJ directive. James Jesus Angleton worked under Alan Dulles and basically initiated it. And then the Warren Commission afterward, headed by none other than Alan Dulles, and all these people are 33rd degree Freemasons, decided there was no conspiracy. It was a lone gunman, and many people were starting to question that. And so the CIA sent out a secret dispatch to label anybody that's questioning the official narrative as a quote conspiracy theorist. And this is this is a very popular term that's even in use today.
Yes, everybody likes to blow that particular terminology up, to belittle, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a way to discredit the, you're coming up with these all these people coming up with wild theories, and it just,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
don't pay attention. Jimmy Carter actually had a UFO experience and he made a report. One of the witnesses when I testified in Washington, um, attorney Daniel Sheehan, testified that President Carter, who made it one of his campaign promises to release the UFO files, was denied by CIA Director George H.W. Bush, Bush Sr. And
Hmm.
so here's a sitting president that's being denied access. Then President Clinton, he had an interest in the UFO matter. Um, and the famed White House correspondent Sarah McClendon asked him, why aren't you doing something with disclosure? And he said, quote, Sarah, there's a secret government in the government, and I don't control it, unquote. He even had his CIA director, James Woolsey, attempt to look into it. The CIA director was denied access. Going through his military and intelligence channels, he couldn't get anything. So what he did was he brought in Dr. Stephen Greer, who was the director for the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, into a 3-hour meeting where he said to Dr. Greer, I know this is real. I'm trying to figure out why the hell I can't gain access to it. And so you have all this long history of all these individuals that are being denied access. So Dr. Greer, becoming aware of the gravity of the situation, the CIA director is being denied access, he met with some military advisors who advised him to start collecting witnesses. And that's how I got involved in this, this whole situation. So from 1993, he started collecting military intelligence witnesses and videotaping them. That same year, 1993, myself, I've been looking over the decade since 1969 for evidence of what's going on with this. I traveled outside Area 51. There was a meeting taking place outside of a military tent with scientist Bob Lazar. Um, no recordings were allowed. I had my camcorder. I broke the rules, and I recorded the 2 hours of him being hit with, a dozen and a half researchers, very savvy people, hitting him with all these questions for 2 hours. And over the decades, he has stayed 100% consistent. He was reverse engineering extraterrestrial craft over at S4, which is a facility just south of Area 51. Now, what happened was because of this meeting outside Area 51, the base freaked out. They went into a complete lockdown situation and they sent out a NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, security advisory to all base personnel to avoid this group or you'll be disciplinary actions. Um, on this document, it had listed all their operations, such as Cosmic Ops and Magi Ops. These were unacknowledged special access programs that were reverse engineering the extraterrestrial spacecraft, such as Bob Lazar worked on.
Mhm.
So somehow, Dr. Greer acquired this classified document, and in 1997, he took it to a Pentagon meeting along with astronaut Edgar Mitchell and Commander Will Miller to the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, very high level, Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson. The admiral attempted to look into it. The admiral, in his high level of constitutional authority, was not only denied access, but he was threatened to drop the matter immediately or see an early retirement and lose rank. And he told Dr. Greer that he knew that Dr. Greer had accumulated witnesses since 1993. He had hundreds by this time. He said, if you can bring your people who are willing to testify under oath before the mainstream media of the world, you have my permission to expose these illegal operations. So in the year 2001, despite death threats, courageously he brought 21 witnesses before the 22 cameras of the mainstream media of the world at one of the largest events in the history of the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., May 9th, 2001. This was backed by over 500 military intelligence witnesses, but 21 of them were willing to uh, give their testimony and state that they're willing to testify under oath, that's penalty of perjury, and some breaking national security oaths before the mainstream media of the world. You know, I happen to be one of those witnesses that was there that day that testified. Uh,
Mhm.
what was disclosed was explosive testimonies. Myself being an ex-ABC newsman, the place was packed with reporters. 22 cameras. I thought, how could this information that we're disclosing not change everything on our world? We're disclosing, heads of intelligence, presidents, CIA directors being denied access. Uh, actually trillions being taken into unacknowledged programs. That we have scientists that can prove we have 0 point energy. We don't need nuclear oil and coal. Uh, Before we went to the moon, a base on the other side of the moon was visually witnessed. The astronauts were sworn to secrecy when they went to the moon in 1969. What actually happened? Why they had to make drop-in video footage? Why the transmissions were cut? All these discrepancies. And so the astronauts were sworn to secrecy on that we had already, by 1989, categorized 57 different extraterrestrial species. Red glowing ET craft have shut down the nuclear weapons launch facilities, Navy ships reporting disc-shaped craft coming out of the oceans, alien reproduction vehicles built back in the 1950s that can go faster than the speed of light were witnessed at Norton Air Force Base. Werner von Braun, his spokesperson, disclosed that in his deathbed testimony that they had planned a series of false flag scenarios. The next event in line, interestingly, was terrorists, which actually happened 4 months later in September of 2001, known as 9/11. Then, with the final planned event to be a false flag alien event, where we'd have, attack from aliens from outer space. I couldn't imagine how this many reporters, this many cameras, and this information being not affect everything. One of the fellow witnesses, Mark McCandish, who was said to have committed suicide with a bullet to his head, before going to the June 2021 Senate hearing, which had the information that we have this advanced anti-gravity technology, which totally goes against the narrative because they continue to say at these hearings that we don't have this type of technology. But
Yeah.
this is an actual photograph of uh, ARV, Alien Reproduction Vehicle, and this is illustration at Norton Air Force Base where they showed like a, mama, papa, baby, spacecraft. So, just like the terrorist event,
Hmm.
which was a false flag event, the alien event, if we had flying saucers come in, everybody was saying, oh, we're being attacked from aliens from outer space. But we actually have this technology and can pull it off if we want. But I doubt they're going to try something like that. Now, what's interesting is my friend Dr. Michael Sally was a teaching professor in Washington, and he showed his students the 2 hours of the witness testimonies. And, just interestingly, how the psychology of the mind at the time, they all thought people were making it up. They didn't believe the stories. So this
Okay.
shows that in 2001, people weren't really ready for this information. And then
Hmm.
it inspired a hacker in the UK, Gary McKinnon, who had to find out the truth for himself, and he got into the computer systems and revealed the US Navy Solar Warden secret space program with a large kilometer craft, uh, non-terrestrial officer transfers, and all this information, which they wanted to put him away for 70 years in prison for revealing that inconvenient fact. Um, like I said, myself being an ex-ABC newsman, I was on, CNN and all the different networks. Um, uh, they did what's called the intelligence agencies called a limited hangout. In other words, you have all this explosive testimony, right? And then when you
Hmm.
come out with the news, you say, uh, they want to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs, but some people have questions about this. They have CIA memos and things, but no congressional hearings are planned right now. And then what they do is they skim over it without revealing some of the explosive testimonies that we're saying. So this limited hangout, yes, they covered it, but they covered it in such a way as to limit the information. So the average person coming home from a hard day at work, turning on the news, watching this, thinks, oh, well, that's nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to see what's going on with UFOs and stuff, but there's more important things in the world. So it
Right.
kind of discounts it in people's minds.
Discounts it, glosses over it, and ensures that you don't really gain any interest or momentum of wanting to understand what really took place there. Yeah, we watch
Exactly.
that news reported that way a lot. Yeah.
So I saw what CNN and the rest of the networks did with it. I was down in San Diego and Los Angeles. They sent a special team from CBS down to interview me, and I said, "Look, I'm not doing this interview with you unless you can promise that I can say on the air that we have these scientists that are willing to prove before an open congressional hearing that we have zero-point energy that can completely replace nuclear oil and coal." They promised up and down, right? Afterward, the producer, after it aired, she said, I'm sorry, I never had this happen before, but the higher executives made me cut that part out. And so this brought up two new questions to me. I said, why is the mainstream media keeping this from the public? I mean, I didn't
Hmm.
even know what Operation Mockingbird was in 2001. So this was kind of an education for me.
Hmm.
And why are advanced technologies, of all things, that could be a solution to our world, why are they being suppressed? And so my question is, who's behind controlling the public's perceptions? So here we go into the matrix of perception. Um, I love this statement. It says, someone once said, when a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, and that's the key, the truth will seem utterly preposterous and its speaker, like me, a raving lunatic. So,
Right. I love to call that hidden in plain sight. You make the
right.
truth so absolutely ridiculous, but yet there it is. That is the truth, and you'd rather buy the lie. You know, Sky is green, not blue.
Yes. true. Yeah. Well, you got to listen to authoritative sources, right?
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, interestingly, a media company out of Hollywood knew I was an ABC newsman and a witness, and out of the blue, they asked me uh, if I could write an article for them on the control of the media in regards to the extraterrestrial UFO matter. I more than gladly accepted because I wanted to find out, what the hell happened back then in 2001. And so I wrote an article for them. I titled it "Who Controls the Agreed Upon Reality Through the Mainstream Media and Why They Fear Disclosing the Truth About the Extraterrestrial Reality." So, the only way I could find this answer, we're not taught in school anything about this. So, what I had to do is go back through history, the beginning of the 20th century. And based on, I became aware of many of the witnesses and their testimonies. So, I had a lot of pieces of the puzzle. But I also researched into authenticated classified documents that got released. And over the years, over the decades, plugging them in chronologically, you can't ever say you have the complete picture, right? But the
Right.
more pieces of the puzzle, the more data that you have, the more a picture starts to form. And
Right.
that picture uh, that reveals this hidden history starts to sound more like in most bizarre science fiction movie that you've ever heard. That's why it keeps its own best secrecy because it's so far removed from our indoctrinated reality.
Hmm.
Such as in 1933, the Nazi SS actually, they made it down to Antarctica and started a secret space program. They entered into an alliance with a reptilian extraterrestrial race that was a stage three civilization. They called it Sakaar, and they
Hmm.
started working on anti-gravity craft. And by 1934, first prototype was successfully flown by the Tool Society. And if you have anti-gravity craft, why wouldn't you not go to the moon, right? And
That's right.
so, at the fall of the Soviet Union, secret Nazi SS archives were able to be acquired by Vladimir Terziski. So, by August 23rd, 1942, the Nazis had landed on the moon and started establishing a moon base. And this is what really stood out to me is that before the end of the war, the Nazis had this plan. They knew they were losing, as far as the against the Allies and everything. But they had this plan to infiltrate and create this matrix of perception in the United States and continue on and hide their secret operations. It's
Hmm.
called Weltanschauungskrieg, and it translates from German into worldview warfare. We
Hmm.
know by the JFK files that were released in 2017, Hitler didn't die in the bunker. Hitler was alive and well in Argentina. Heinrich Himmler didn't take the cyanide cap. His doppelganger didn't have the fencing duel scar on his cheek. They both
Okay.
escaped. 250,000 Germans, Reich's top scientists, over 100 U-boats, all escaped down to Antarctic Base 211, also known as New Schwabenland, to operate from the underground in Antarctica.
Mm. Okay.
In 1945, now Alan Dulles, who's infamous for the Nazi infiltration in so many different ways, cuts a deal with Major General Reinhard Gehlen, who's head of Nazi intelligence. So the Nazis had all the intelligence on the Soviets, and so they hid them in the Bavarian mountains in these microfiche containers. And so Truman was afraid of the Soviets. And so they brought it as a trading chip on the table to bring in thousands of Nazi spies into the OSS, which turned in today's CIA.
Hmm.
And then everybody's familiar with, most people, about Operation Paperclip, where Alan Dulles orders the Nazi dossiers to be cleansed of people who were once classified as a menace to the security of the United States were then whitewashed and their dossiers cleaned and they were put into key positions.
This is what we.
And the Rockefeller Foundation, working in alliance with the Nazis, they rewrite the. So you think this would be against the law? They
Oh,
had the
right.
they had the history. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's true in the history of World War II, but the key elements that school children have no clue of is that the Nazis did escape, and that they infiltrated into our country. And so there's a whole lot that isn't revealed in history. And if you rewrite if you rewrite history, future generations won't have a clue what happened.
Exactly.
In 1946, you know, the Nuremberg trials was the same time the formation of the Center of Disease Control. They had 1,600 of these former Nazi scientists, doctors, men responsible for murder, human experimentation, eugenics, men who never stood trial, is formed this year by many of these, quote, former Nazis. And during the Nuremberg trials, IG Farben was Hitler's largest financial backer. Uh, that was split and are part of 13 pharmaceutical corporations that you see on your television today um, that still operate. William Tompkins, a highly credible witness with much documentation to support him, he says that the Nazi scientists that came over in paperclip took over the aerospace biomedical operations in the U.S. That you know, one of the first ones was Scripps Research. Eventually, the highest positions within the U.S. pharmaceutical industry is in their control today. And you know, my great grandfather was going up against Rockefeller in the early 1900s, where Rockefeller was taking over the complete medical system, demonizing natural methods um, and so forth, and taking over control of the school and the educations of the doctors and everything. And his model was basically set up for profit. He was a businessman.
Exactly.
Um, and my great grandfather was the president of the Homeopathic Medical Society back in those early days that was going up against this man. So 1947 is a very busy year. The crash happens in Roswell. Everyone's familiar with
Right. It
that.
was very, yes,
And
very.
it's actually a Trojan horse uh, to entice our military. Well, oh, look at this advanced technology. God, we how and they couldn't figure this stuff out. I mean, it didn't have levers and knobs and meters and things. It was all consciousness interface, and so the military really wanted this technology. So it was like a kind of like a enticement, you know, to do a future exchange. But the Nebu or the Greys, basically their agenda was to infiltrate and take over our planet. Um, so shortly after this, in September 1947, not only the MJ-12 group was created, which was headed by MJ-1 Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter, who warned about the dangers of secrecy, the extreme secrecy that's being used, that it could be misused. And he was spot on. Not only was MJ-12 created, but the CIA was created by Allen Dulles, who insisted President Truman create the CIA against his better better knowledge and wisdom, and the U.S. Air Force.
Okay.
In 1947, they bring over Nazi Germany's top underground base expert, Xavier Dorsch, in New Mexico. They start tunneling and creating a network of deep underground military bases, which people to this day still have no idea, you know, what kind of operations are being done under there. And so this was a map by one of the engineers that helped build that by Phil Snyder, who was
Mhm.
suicided. 1947 again.
Admiral Byrd.
Secretary of Navy James Forrestal, he sends Admiral Byrd down to attack the Nazi base. The Nazis, with advanced anti-gravity and directed energy weapons, wiped out all their aircraft. They had to swear everybody to secrecy, and they limped back home. And James Forrestal wanted the public to know about this, and he started talking. And so Truman sent him into the hospital for, psychiatric thing, and they
Mm.
really wanted to quiet him, and so they did. They threw him out the hospital window, um, and the authenticated MJ-12 annual report revealed this action, saying, quote, "The untimely death of Secretary Forrestal was deemed necessary and regrettable." And then the 1949 CIA Act comes into place, where this gives the CIA complete congressional stamp of approval for whatever they want, for any black budget, without regard to any provision of law. And President Truman expressed his concern by saying, "For some time I've been disturbed by the way the CIA has been diverted from its original assignment. It has become an operational and at times a policy-making arm of the government. And it has become a government all its own and all secret. They don't have to account to anybody." And Alan Dulles, once again, infamous for the Weltanschauungskrieg, the worldview warfare, sets up Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA is paying 400 media journalists to form the public's perception with their controlled media assets. They started out with Washington Post, ABC, NBC, CBS, Time, Newsweek, Associated Press, United Press International, etc. Now, when I was an ABC newsman, I would get news reports coming off of Associated Press and United Press International and be reading them. And I had no idea who's forming this information, whether it's accurate or not. You just naturally, you trust it being authoritative sources.
Right.
But it's been
There
in
was an
control.
integrity about the news agencies at that time. There was an integrity about just reporting, making sure that what you were reporting was thorough, was accurate, and had been well researched. So we didn't question it because there was integrity.
Indeed. And then not only are they controlling our perceptions through the media, and this was an infiltration that was highly thought out and clever and with key people. They set up the Invention Secrecy Act. What the Invention Secrecy Act, and I spent 10 years meeting with scientists, inventors, vetting technologies, attempting to bring a solution out, but there's a system in place that keeps us using these obsolete, dangerous technologies. The inventor comes up with a solution. He'll get what's called a national security order, which states that your invention has been deemed to be a detriment to the national security of the United States, therefore you cannot share it with anybody. Over 6,000 of these have been issued, keeping us. Show you the list of things. Anybody that comes up with an anti-gravity device, this is why we're still using rockets. Anybody that comes up with anything that creates free energy, um, that's why we still have to use gasoline and
Yeah.
nuclear oil,
Propane,
coal.
yeah.
Um, anything that prolongs human life and prevents aging, that's why they want to keep our lives short. Anything that will enhance our intelligence, keep us stupid and die early,
Yeah.
using rockets and nuclear oil and coal. And so this is part of a sensitive application warning system, part of the U.S. Patent Office. And these are matters of special interest that if your patent or anything has any of these, you will get one of those national security orders. And I
What
know,
blows me away is that this was issued in 1952. So why would they want us to be dummied down since 1950? It just blows me away that even that early, that this was issued, that don't allow innovation to come through.
yeah, it's it's how our planet has become, technologically hijacked, is using these apparatus that they have set in place. And this is a big one. Um, and they flex their muscles over the Capitol building in 1952 with craft coming up from Antarctica. They're trying to just explain this away, with oh, it's just, you know, swamp gas or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and they really want the public to not pay attention to those UFOs and everything. That's all, you know, the CIA forms this Robinson panel, and they roll out Einstein here,
Mm-hmm.
um, to deny the UFO reality, though there's nothing to it. Um, and if you're a pilot, military, or you have a sighting, or you're at a ship at sea and you have a sighting, you can't disclose this. It's under the Espionage Act. You'll be penalized, possibly up to 10 years in prison. And so these are the methodologies they use in order to keep this reality from the public mind by controlling it. Um, a major event happened in February 1954. President Eisenhower, uh, Murdoch, now it's called Edwards Air Force Base, met with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, planned on public disclosure. One of the witnesses there, Gerald Light, said that it was his conviction. He wrote in a letter, when there's a document, a letter, that President Eisenhower was planning on going on radio and television in May of 1954 and disclosing this to the people of the world. The Galactic Federation warned him not to trust the deceptive Nebu grays that were orbiting our planet. And so Eisenhower wanted to go along with that. But a new MJ-12 group that was created with, of all people, Alan Dulles as the head, MJ-1, circumvents Eisenhower, and they want technology, So the sneaky grays, they in exchange, they're saying, "Oh, we're a dying race, and that we need some DNA, and so if you we'll abduct a certain amount of people, and we'll give you a listing of who they are, and we'll give you some technology." And so what they did was they gave them underground facilities to work with. They allowed them to abduct our citizens, not without our consent, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the whole thing went sideways. They abducted millions of
Yeah.
people for their hybrid program. What they were doing was they were um, abducting women and things and taking the DNA, and they're creating this hybrid race underground, which is eventually, see, their genetics couldn't operate on our planet, so they had to make a hybrid of a human and a gray, and so they had millions and millions of these. My friend Elena Danaan has a lot more information on all this.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I just finished reading about this. It could only be a specific blood type, and then a certain protein had to be introduced. And then, if that protein was able to exist within that blood type, then they were able to, move forward. But yeah, very, very much and very well explained by Elena Dahan. Yeah, Danan. So, yeah.
So this was a very bad treaty that was signed with them. And instead of disclosure that Eisenhower had planned in May, um, former Nazi SS officer Prince Bernhard sets up the yearly Bilderberg meetings. They have the regular meetings with all the top people in order to form the public's perceptions. Bilderberg meetings, along with the Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral, they basically work with these media psychological think tanks that forms the public's perception. You can see, the top executives of, CNN, Washington Post, Time,
Yeah.
all of the networks that we're familiar with, they centrally control. That's why the talking points are all the same. Now 1958 happens, and uh, run by a former Nazi SS officer, keeping us believing we need rockets to overcome gravity. So this is how they do. They took over, created NASA, and they took it over, and it's like this expensive rocket show. While the Nazis had already achieved advanced technology and are moving out across our solar system. Um, you know, they had craft built back in the 1930s and 40s, you know. Um, yeah, here's an interesting psychological bridge that was created through science fiction. Star Trek, released in 1966. Actually, the Galactic Federation of Worlds has been working with the white hats, I guess you could say, within our government, and they wanted to create a psychological bridge in the future with the concepts of a prime directive, warp drive, teleportation, all these different concepts using Star Trek. This was given, script was given to Gene Roddenberry through the Office of Naval Intelligence that was working with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And, as I mentioned earlier, the different civilization classification scales,
Yeah.
one is just developing life forms.
Mhm.
Most people on this planet think we're just a structured society, developing spiritual concepts and that sort of thing. While behind the curtain, we're actually an interstellar culture, having reached interstellar capacity and made contact by its own process with other galactic civilizations, which is the secret curtain that kind of like the Truman Show in a way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a perfect explanation of it, and the fact that we've always operated behind the curtain, always. And
Yes,
so, it's just like, come on, really? It gets to a point where you think the curtain is hiding something, and maybe it is for some people, but at a certain point, if you do your homework and you do your due diligence, you have to know that it's just too much information that's just in conflict and in contradiction to what's obvious. It's like saying the sky is red and you're looking at it and you know good and well it's blue. You know, you can't keep psychologically telling me the sky is red, the sky is red, the sky is red when I can see obviously that it's blue.
right. There's no chemtrails. It's all contrails. Yeah. Right. Interesting connection with secret societies and the power of human consciousness, something that you know well, Amelia.
Yeah.
You affect reality. It was interesting that in 1957, Professor Heinz Eisnick, who was a chairman of the psychology board at University of London, he wrote a letter insinuating this gigantic conspiracy involving 30 major universities all over the world and hundreds of respected scientists to silence the truth about what they knew about the powers of human consciousness to affect reality. Why? Now, my question is, why would anybody go to such a great effort to suppress that type of information unless the truth is that each one of us has an incredible power to affect reality?
Exactly. Exactly that. Because you know what? When you control the information, then you control the masses. You control the people because they're not aware. And if you're not aware, we didn't come here to play small, but you play small because all you get impressed upon you are the limitations of what you're able to do. Here are the rules, here are the rules, here are the rules, here are the rules. Oh, you broke the rules. No, 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 hand smack. Go back into your box. You know better than that. Here are the rules. Okay.
Exactly,
Can you
exactly.
imagine, a race that says, I am grand? You know, our interstellar behind the curtain races understand that, by which it was phenomenal to read the 110 races I learned about through Elena's book, but yet there's many, many beyond that. Imagine if we all came here and we said, we are not small. We did not come here to play small. We are grand. We could not be controlled. And this is all about control.
That's right. That's right. And we would understand the power of the media, of Hollywood, of television, and the perceptions
Exactly.
and the movies and the type of entertainment that we see that puts into our collective subconscious mind that we see this type of reality, repeat it and repeat it, uh, that is for an agenda
It's an agenda, and it is truly, truly psychological warfare at its best. You
at its
know,
best.
and
It's
I feel like COVID was just the reinforcement of that. You know, we have black, white, you know, upper class, lower class, mass, no mass. I mean, come on. We've been doing this for years and years and years, pitting people against each other and making those rifts between what people believe in, and that the limited beliefs so powerful that they interfere with families and otherwise, right? And we just went through another practice session of it again.
indeed, and you know, these secret societies, they know that the human consciousness co-creates reality based on what the mind believes to be true and real. And this process is amplified when instilled in the collective consciousness of the masses through
Yeah,
the media. They are projecting what they want in our minds so that we co-creatively build that reality in support of the agenda that they want to push forward. Um,
exactly.
humans hurting other humans, the apocalyptic things, the zombie things. Uh, you-
Anyone that we're not aware of, any intergalactic, we have to kill, kill, kill because it's going to be a war and blah 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 blah. Yeah,
Constant fear. Fear is how you control
constant.
people. They give up their liberties and freedoms in order for protection from all these boogeymen out there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of interesting, you know. I had interest in secret societies and researching them. Been involved in one
Well,
of
you're not
them.
alone, because you know there's some really great books out there. The Secret History of the United States and all of the secret societies and the roles of how each one plays a role in terms of controlling the information, controlling their sector of what they feel is powerful that deemed that the masses should know. And again, how they hide it in plain sight, which is they give you a semblance of the truth and then they mask some ridiculousness around it so that when or if the true truth comes out, it's been masked around this ridiculousness that you would go, no, I don't believe that because look at the ridiculous that's been masked around it, you know. And so therefore, what's obvious to you, you don't even know, and the typical person doesn't do research. It drives me nuts. We must do our research. We shouldn't be taking
Right.
anything at plain value without doing homework on it. You
Yeah, you
know,
can't tell people about this. They have to research and discover it for
have
themselves.
to. But what
Um,
ends up happening is our typical person, and I'm sorry, I'm on my
oh
thing
no,
about
no, 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 no. I love when you have input.
we have this tendency for things that we don't know, we tend to deify the people. And instead of basically saying, oh, that's an interesting fact, I'm going to have to check that one out, we go, oh, really? Yeah, wow, I'm amazed. And we deify them. And because of saying, I've met many a person who will argue and debate ridiculousness with authority. And because it's been argued with authority, you know, the ridiculousness, we deify them. Well, they must be right because look how passionate they are about it. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, they have authoritative sources.
we have to wake up. We have to wake up and actually understand the utterance and then really understand sometimes even the basic rhetoric. Sometimes we don't understand what rhetoric actually means.
Yeah. I love
And
the story about this one he was a gay liberal Brandon what was his name, but he was a extreme supporter for Hillary and everything, and his family member said to him, it'd have to be a family member, right? That you know, CNN's manipulating the information. Oh no, they're not. No, they're not. So he took it on as a challenge, and then he researched and he found out, yeah, indeed, they were manipulating the information And then all of a sudden, what happens is you have somebody who is have a belief system in a certain way. When they found out they've been deceived and betrayed, they will flip 180 degrees. And he started the walkaway movement, after that.
Hmm.
I don't want to go into the politics of the whole thing, but it's a matter of psychological warfare of what is true and what's a deception. And the truth can withstand scrutiny. The truth withstands the test of time, whereas a lie will eventually be exposed. And so, yeah, the secret societies, you have Rothschild working with Adam Weishaupt. Back in 1776, they actually infiltrated and took over the Scottish Rite Freemason, and
Hmm.
um, and so they using it as a front for their operations. And so you look at all the presidents, you know, you've got Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower,
Hmm.
Johnson, Ford, Reagan, Bush, blah, 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 blah. All these people, 33rd degree
Yeah.
Freemasons, right? And you have world leaders, Churchill, Stalin, you've got intelligence, military, you have Allen Dulles, Heinrich Himmler,
Yeah.
Rockefeller, Walt
Yeah.
Disney, Gene Roddenberry, you have all these different
There you
people
go.
that were high level in these secret societies. And what they do is they put their people in high positions. And when you do that, you can control everything. As
Right.
William Casey.
And
Oh, go
And I,
ahead.
and I want to go there in terms of consciousness too, because it's really important for people to understand when they hide things in plain sight or when things are hidden, what and the misinformation for the psychological warfare. What they'll do is basically you have a right, you have an indigenous right. That indigenous right is powerful. They'll take one complete portion of that indigenous right, and so you have a missing factor. So you think that you have embraced something that you can do, this initiation is right, but you're missing an important factor as a part of that right. And so the masses will have the information or think they have the information, but it's incomplete. Simple little things like that. Or they'll deify. You really have to look at what they're calling what's demonistic and everything else, because if a particular area of something is really, really powerful and you deem a certain portion of it demonistic, then people are like, oh no, I would never touch that. I would never be seen with that. But what they've actually
Right.
done is hidden something again in plain sight. People really have to think of what manipulations could, in
Oh, yeah.
essence, take place. That's why you read everything. You have to
Don't
read
listen to
everything.
those dangerous conspiracy theorists. They have dangerous disinformation. Don't listen to them. Listen to the
I
news you
had
can trust.
wonderful elders taught me, to do my work, to really look at everything, the plethora of all information, and not pieces of information.
Oh, that's such a good
So
point. That's such a good point. You have to look at both sides. You have to look at
both
all the
sides,
information. As
all
so long as you stay in your own camp and and don't look at what the other camp is saying, and look at both of them, then use your own critical critical thinking of, what what makes
your
sense,
logic, your
what can
analysis,
be
your rationale. Yes.
yeah. What could be like William Casey.
What can be extrapolated to put the puzzle together? Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. It's excellent point. Excellent point. William Casey, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. And that's basically and that's why somebody who tells the truth, can, you know, he's crazy. It's like it, it can't be, but the evidence. Here's more
But I
evidence.
love this. You know why? Because when we go, it can't be, that's when you really have to look at your own limited belief system. And I'm saying it out loud. Because you've been raised with a limited belief system, whether no matter what your parents are, here's a certain amount of belief that you have. And here are the limits as far as you're willing to go with that belief system. And as anything that challenges the where my ego is comfortable in the bubble of the boundary, and I have to expand my boundary. Well, I can't expand my boundary. It has to fit in the bubble. If it doesn't fit in the bubble, it can't be. And we really have to look at that because really, in essence, Dan, there are no limits. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as a limit.
Yeah, and the division that's been created in our world based on, and we see it everywhere, is they they create this division that is ah how to say, it's like trying to find the key that reconciles the false division, because we're not each other's enemy. We're we're being played by a hidden enemy that's creating the division. And until people get that, it's what will cause us to unite. And when we unite, and then what will happen is that the true enemy, and it's their worst nightmare, that they'll be exposed, and we can take back our planet. You can
We'd be a
imagine
force to be reckoned with. We'd be a force to be reckoned with.
oh, their worst nightmare is that we become one. And that's why you and I are doing this show, is that we're hoping to plant seeds to, not asking anybody to believe anything. I want you to question everything you see on the show and do your own due diligence and see what supports by corroborating evidence that reveals what the truth is. Uh,
Exactly.
here's a little another truth bomb. Back in 1983, there was 50 media companies. Imagine the nightmare of trying to control 50 media companies with the CIA. Um, and so what they did was the CIA set up these secret meetings in Sun Valley, Idaho. Every year they meet and they bring in all the main, CNN, MSNBC, Google, Twitter back then, everybody together. And they bring in Bill Gates and the CIA director and all these, all for this one agenda. And what they did was, the whole purpose of these meetings is to consolidate, consolidate, consolidate. So they got it down to 6 main corporations now from 50, which they centrally control. And the GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom,
Mhm.
Time Warner, CBS. And so when you listen to the news, you hear almost the same verbiage being repeated, because the newscasters are reading the teleprompters that are provided for them. And if you're a newscaster and you say, "Wait a minute, that's not right," you're fired immediately.
You're fired. You're
Yeah.
gone.
So, the true enemy of the people. Today, we continue to have an infiltration over several generations of a domestic enemy that was in the military. You're all sworn to protect our Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. This is, to me, a domestic enemy. It's operating on our soil, and it's centrally controlling the information systems, using psychological warfare to support an agenda that's against an unsuspecting public. But fortunately, the numbers are growing of people starting to catch on. Um, Dr. Joseph Goebbels, he head of Nazi Germany's Ministry of Propaganda, he said, propaganda becomes ineffective the moment we become aware of it. Because once you can see how the infiltration occurred and how the matrix of perception was created, then the propaganda that hid the truth is then destroyed by the disclosure of the truth. And so, my questions all started getting answered that I started at the beginning of this. Why the government hasn't disclosed this to the public? That's kind of obvious. Huh? Why the extraterrestrials don't reveal themselves to the people of Earth? Well, when we understand what the prime directive is and what happened with the Nebu Grays, that's kind of another reason why. Why the mainstream media is keeping this from the public? Well, when you understand the network control and the intelligence agencies working with that in order to keep this quiet, and they don't want the public to know about Nazi Germany escaping and having secret space program in Antarctica and having our fleets destroyed, and why the advanced technologies are being suppressed to the public. Well, if you had um, if you had free energy and you had faster than light craft and you had technology that could heal anything, cancers or anything, um, there's a lot of interest, let's say, to keep the status quo. Um, and uh, and I got the answer to this. Back in 2004, I joined a group of researchers that we set up. Dr. Greer set up a corporation to identify scientists to bring out energy devices. And for the next 10 years, I have a good technical background. And so I met with scientists all over the world that Dr. Greer,
Hmm.
Professor Loiter. I'm down in Dominican Republic. Inventors got putting out 500 watts running off an earth battery. Dr. Greer said, I didn't want to see any batteries connected to this. So he set up and only produced like 1 watt in and about 500 watts coming out. John Bedini, I worked with the Bedini
Hmm.
brothers for many years. Energy devices he was making based on Tesla. My wonderful wife Rebecca helping at we set up a laboratory in Virginia. And I was meeting with these scientists and things, and we're uh, vetting these technologies. But it was a nightmare. People were murdered. People received national security orders. For 10 years, I gave up because I realized that until the system in place is dismantled, we're not going to see these advanced technologies come out to help the world. So these are my current conclusions. The the Galactic Federation has been working with the U.S. Navy behind the scenes, going back to the 1940s, and they developed the Solar War and Secret Space program that the UK hacker Gary McKinnon discovered. Um, and in 2001, I was on CNN, CBS, different networks and stuff like that, and every time they would do what's called the giggle factor. Like in San Francisco, they said, "Oh, the Disclosure Project's looking to aliens to solve the world's energy problem." And just one situation after another. But so it effectively kept the information that Admiral Wilson wanted disclosed to the public of these illegal secret government operations by the control of the media. So back in President Trump's first inauguration, he kind of hinted at we stand at the birth of a new millennium ready to unlock the mysteries of space, free the earth of the miseries of disease, to harness the energies, industry, and technologies of tomorrow, which um, I believe he's aware of these things. And it's the reason they set up the Space Force, because all of a sudden you're going to see, oh, we just discovered anti-gravity. Oh, wow, but we actually had it since October of 1954, as Dr. Stephen Greer testified. Um, and so the best news ever is that these elements of the Nebu Grays, which are kind of like the Borg in Star Trek. And then you have the reptilians, which are just like
Hmm.
the Klingons in Star Trek, like warriors that died, we honor, die in battle, and they never surrender. And then you have the Nazi SS that entered into an alliance with them. All three of these groups were removed out of our solar system back in 2021, 2022, with the Earth Alliance working together. The Earth Alliance is made up of our secret space force, you could say, working together with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which is extraterrestrial. And they removed, from the moon, Mars, Ceres, um, all these, all these regressive elements out of our system, which is, incredible. This was substantiated, by the way, by the Arlington uh, think tank that's in Washington, D.C. Let's see. A disclosure plan was given in January of 2023. Thor Hanaredian, he's a high commander in the Galactic Federation of Worlds, gave to General Van Herk in the Raven Rock Mountain Complex the plan. It was like a device that gave the whole disclosure plan, of which we need to acclimate our civilization to bring them in the least amount of psychological trauma, and bring us into the realization
Right.
that of the true reality that, we're not alone. What's interesting is Elena Danaan was actually she has a quantum implant as a physical device, not channeled or anything like that, that
Mhm.
actually saw him handing to this general, and Dr. Michael Salick gave her a list of 40 generals to pick out what he looked like. And she picked this one, which happens to be the head of NORAD and the most appropriate individual. So I found it interesting that these two highly uh, esteemed individuals. In 2016, the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, said that they're scared of Trump because he's not one of them. He's not part of the club. He's not controllable. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. He said this on Fox News. I was, whoa. And then in 2020, you have Professor Chaim Shad, head of the Israeli space security program, saying that President Trump is working with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, who told him to hold back on disclosure until the people of Earth are ready. This is a highly credible individual. Uh, so, what happened in 2024? Remember all the drones and things? The
Yeah.
the metallic ones are the Galactic Federation of Worlds. They're about 300 years more advanced than
Okay.
we are. The plasma ones, the light uh, look like they morph and they kind of plasmic. They're of the Intergalactic Confederation, another advanced race that's 20,000 years more advanced than the Pleiadians. And then you had the other drones, which were basically
Okay.
deep state, high technology that was trying to muddy the water. So this is part of the unfolding disclosure plan. The next phase of the disclosure plan is my friend JP has to wear his military helmet. He keeps has to remain anonymous for temporarily for a while. But he goes off planet. He's been on to these space arcs and on Ganymede and everything. Incredible. He says he's actually seen these, and the next phase will be these large cigar-shaped craft will be appearing. So mark my words. This will be the next thing that you'll be seeing is these large cigar-shaped craft in our skies, and probably following that may be the motherships with even larger, so there won't be any denying, that they're here. And so the future, the liberation of our planet Earth from the deep state criminals of humanity, and the joining of the Galactic Federation of Worlds so that we may evolve unimpeded. And see, we've been on a probationary period, and
Hmm.
um, and once we're able to join the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which is, tens of thousands of cultures across our galaxy, it's kind of like a NATO. If you have some marauding extraterrestrials that are trying to take over a civilization and enslave them, if you're a member of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, they'll protect you. And so, if we're a member of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which means we have developed to a point where a peaceful civilization, then all the technology that they have, in transportation, medical, everything, and it would transform our world, um, dramatically. We would have, technologies such as, the med beds that can reverse age you, cure any disease. We don't need rockets. We don't need all this obsolete. We can help clean up our planet, the free energy. I mean, there's so many people suffering on this planet that is needless. And so that's a great few. And my dear friend Elena, she actually went on board a Mettaton ship that saw a time-looking device and saw 20 years in the future, and it's beautiful. The the more nature is coming on our planet, and just super advanced technology working in harmony with the Earth. And so much much good to look forward to. But doing these shows and things like that, we just need to seed the questioning minds that are out there to do the due diligence, to research and see if, is this just made up BS, or is there some substance to it? Is there some truth to it? But everybody's just attempting to survive on this planet. They don't have the luxury of to being able to spend time in researching documents and witnesses and all this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what I would actually say is that a lot of people come here, or we're born, and we come here to the earth, to the planet, and we go, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? And, I always love sharing with people at a minimum, your purpose is to hold your own light, to be purposeful and hold your connection of your light and your love, and focus inward, knowing that what you bring to the earth is powerful and beautiful and loving and knowing. And if you can just take care of yourself in that respect, then what happens is that you're holding the light for those who need to come out of the chaos and the storm. You're holding the light so others can join you and then be in their light because they see you as a representation of holding that light. We all don't need to be on the front lines. We all don't need to have to, I got to do something, I got to change something, I got to fix something. If you want to do something, change something, fix something, work on self, hold your light. And then anything above and beyond holding that light is just beautiful graciousness and a gift to humanity.
Such
And
an
if we,
important point, because as we understand that we are all interconnected, and that
yeah,
when we awaken, that within, you can spend your whole life trying to fight the outside, and trying to make change, but the real change happens when you understand who you are,
right.
and know your know your power to affect by and love is really one of the greatest powers there is, and compassion, kindness. As we talked in our part one, that about the crystal technology, about the matrix that we're in is an ordered state of geometrical resonance, where dissonance, which is, hatred and, all the other things, where love, it bridges us from, the lower densities into the higher densities. And our planet is going in a density transition right now into a higher density. And I mean, we already are in it, um,
Yeah, we are.
but it all starts with knowing who you are. I 100% agree.
And, when we can all stand together, that's what amplifies. That's what we want to be the ripple effect, is that light that we hold, and seeing my brother, seeing my fellow human being next to me, amplifying the same thing that I am, which is holding our light, holding our love, holding that. And, like we say love is everything, but we really don't understand the intensity and the levels by which we really are amplifying love, and that all war has been stopped by love, because love doesn't react the way that war does. It's not looking for retribution, getting back and hurting others, and I'm going to take possession and greed and all of the things that need to be fed in order to maintain that. So when we stand in our light, when we stand in our love, and we're able to amplify that, then it doesn't have a chance because we're not
Right, right,
actually responding. And this is so basic, but I like to break it down like this because people don't get it. They don't get it. You know, when that person is arguing with you, and if you just sat there quietly, looked at them and said, "Are you done yet? Because I love you." Doesn't matter what you say, you
right,
know. And then they can't get the reaction that they're looking for to be able to feed what they want to do when they want to bring you to that lower level. And war is the same thing. All of it's the same. If you can't be goaded, if you can't be deemed the reactionary to feed that low level energy, and you could just stand in it, just stand in your truth and your light and your love, you change the course right there, because you can't a reaction can't be gleaned. It can't
yeah.
be
When
gleaned.
the religions they on this planet, they another aspect of getting hijacked, which where they put the intermediaries between us and our source, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and the truth is that we are all fractals of one source, and that is why there's no power greater than love, because love acknowledges the unity of that we're all part of one.
yes, it truly does. I think that that's a good place to leave this.
You can,
Anything else that
yeah, you can't go wrong with love. Yeah.
you can't go wrong? You can't. Is there anything else you want to share with the
Oh,
audience before we close?
just I hope it tweaks some people's heads on interest in history is always boring to me in high school, and so forth. Uh, and when I started really researching for decades and understanding the true reality that has been hidden, it was like one revelation of, oh my God, this is really what's happening behind the scenes. Um, then it's like then you realize, oh my God, there's so many people that aren't aware of this reality. And that's the one of the main reasons that's keeping it from moving forward is the unawareness. And so disclosure is important in that aspect. And so, connect with your inner self, and also be a voice, express yourself. And by doing so, you affect the collective matrix that we're all in.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to have the conversation. Have the conversation, learn, listen, research, do your own digging, but don't deify. We're not here to, we all sit in circle. The indigenous say we all sit in circle. There's no one above us, there's no one below us, there's no one in front of us, there's no one behind us. We sit and we all bring something collectively together to the table. And it is so important to remember that. Your
That's very
contribution,
profound.
our
Yes,
contribution, our community.
so
So
true and
here we are to
such a
complement
pleasure
one.
always to join you. And we had a fun two shows here going into these realms of that aren't normally taught in school.
Yes, yes. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and all that you bring to the table and sharing your heart. I appreciate it. If you like what you saw, please subscribe to us. Please share this information and help somebody to learn and open their eyes. And again, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. And thank you again, Dan Willis, for joining us. And this has been another episode of The Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. We'll see you next time.